Hello everyone and welcome to Peeps in a Podcast. I'm very excited today to have a very special guest, Georgia Hamer, who is actually our first podcast guest with first-hand experience of HIE, as she had an HIE event herself at birth almost 30 years ago. So welcome, Georgia. Great to have you here.
Hello.
And we're actually recording this as a video as well at Georgia's request. So it's great to have you on screen as well.
Hello, thank you. If I am not looking at the screen, it's because I can't basically focus on the screen due to my eyesight, but we'll cover that in the podcast.
No problem at all. It's really great that you're willing and happy to come and talk to us about your life and your experiences after your HIE event. But before we get started, tell us a bit more about you, Georgia.
Hi, so I'm nearly 30 and I was born in June of 94 and I had a HIE event because I was perfectly full term when I was inside my mum, but something happened and we're not entirely sure why, but it has left me with periventricular leukomalacia, or PVL for short, because no one can say that mouthful every time, which basically means that I had water on my brain when I was in utero, and the water disappeared. No one's entirely sure why, but it left me with quadriplegic spastic affectoid cerebral palsy. Say that 3 times fast, it's impossible. But yeah, so basically I'm unable to move any parts of my body basically, except my hand on my right side.
Okay, and thanks for sharing that. I know that you do some really interesting things like working on radio. What's life like for you right now?
Life is constantly busy. I have carers 8 to 4, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and I live with my parents still, but because social services circumstances just makes it easier for me to live here because I have fairly complex needs due to my HIE event. But so yeah, but we're constantly busy. I do things like this. I have my own radio show. I on a disability station. I go to art groups. I deliver talks to university people. I do a lot basically.
Wow, that sounds amazing. How did you start doing your radio show? What kind of radio show do you run?
I run something called The Random Show bi-weekly, which is basically me being able to be random on the air.
I love that.
Having like lots of weird and wonderful conversations and stuff. And I run it because I went to like day centre servicing for people, for children and adults with disabilities. It's fairly similar to what you would see in like aged care, but for people with additional needs. So I started there when I was 8, and I've had them throughout my life pretty much. So yeah, and now I'm one of the presenters on the radio show down there.
That's great. And do you enjoy doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds great. Let's just talk a little bit more about your HIE event.
We think I contracted, if that's right, PVL fairly early on because I did not move inside my mum at all from the times that you're meant to start moving. So it basically meant that I was born pretty much the way I am now. I have a few metal bits inside me, but they're new additions, shall we say, that weren't there when I was born. But I've pretty much been physically like this for the majority of my life, and we don't really know why, because I was only told I had PVL as they learned more about it. So we don't really know, like professionals and myself and my parents and extended family don't really understand what happened to me per se, because my birth was at 40 plus 3 days, so we're not entirely sure why it occurred, because on paper it was a normal birth and everything was textbook on paper, apart from the the non-movement. So we believe it happened fairly early, but we can't pinpoint that date to be like, this is when and why.
It's very common that we don't really know why or when exactly it occurred. So I think it would be really interesting to hear more about your whole story. Can you tell us more about what happened throughout, I guess, to start off with, throughout your childhood, maybe talk a bit about school?
Yeah, that's fun. I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and we're very close in age. My eldest sister being only 33, so like there's only 3.5 years between all of us, which makes it fun. Being the youngest of 3, it was a very loud household, and we talked a lot about all sorts of random stuff. But yeah, and then I had my event, but previous to that, my eldest sister has a completely different disability to me. So our childhood was normal in a way of the fact that we had like the school and childhood stuff, but then it wasn't normal in the fact that we two out of 3 of us spent a lot of time in hospital. So for various things, because people think that doing certain surgeries would help, and sadly, it didn't really help either of us really, unless we needed it. And then my sister decided at 16 to have her leg amputated. So yeah, but school was standard really. I started school at 2 years old, and I went to a special nursery primary, and it became very clear to the staff and to my parents that while I was physically quite disabled and complex needs, I had a lot of capacity, like normal age capacity, which isn't always the case with people with my level of need. So then it was decided that I would go to do what they liked to call in the 90s split placement between that and my sister's primary school. So twice a week I would go to that school for 2 days for what they call social interaction. It was basically more of the social side, so I could talk to people that were my age but weren't disabled, because it was decided that I needed to learn to communicate with people, because obviously in special schools the majority of people that can talk is not the same as like in the normal mainstream, and people were worried that I'd not be able to hold a conversation. apart from with my sisters, which I do a lot, obviously, but it's not fun. So yeah, it was quite shortly decided after that I would go to normal mainstream school. And then for high school, someone in their infinite wisdom decided I should go to mainstream high school for full time, like 5 days a week, which sadly didn't work out as well as we were promised it would, because they basically promised the earth and then didn't really deliver on anything. But yeah, that's another story. But yeah, and then so I was again sent to like do, but that was more based on my education, because it was also deemed while I was in primary school that I could actually succeed and get fairly good GCSEs. So they were like, "Oh, you actually have to like learn here rather than just coming in to like talk to people," which was fun to begin with. But yeah, that is basically a very potted history of my schooling.
Okay. Well, that sounds like it was not all easy at all. But was there anything, what could have been done differently? You said that they promised the earth and didn't deliver. What were the things that could have helped you, do you think, more?
It wasn't really the school fault, it was more the people in my year group, because they saw me as very severely disabled because they'd not seen anyone with disabilities. So they all saw me as a fairly disabled person, which granted I am. Because of their perception of what I could be like, they decided it was best not to talk to me. So like no one for a little bit in primary school, but I could get around it in primary school because I had a few friends that would talk to me, but no one in high school apart from like the other disabled students, because I went to a school with a special needs unit attached to it. Again, council's infinite wisdom that this was the way we educate people now. Didn't work and stuff, but yeah, because I went to that, the only people that was taught to me was the disabled students, which was fine, but it wasn't basically what everyone had hoped, because everyone had hoped they could have integrated us a lot more, but because of the mainstream school perception of us, they didn't really educate us, and well, they didn't really include us. So I left school at 16 with a handful of GCSEs, because also on top of this, the teachers didn't really have the expertise to differentiate or make anything understandable for me, except in like the science department of all places. But everyone else was like, I don't really know how to support someone with this level of, which was fun, because everyone would, I would think I was really stupid or and like not able to access anything, or they'd aim it too high, because of my condition I have no ability to record my answers apart from like verbally, because I can't write or anything. So, and that was another barrier, because exam boards don't tend to like it when someone turns up and is like, I want to do an exam, but I don't really have a way of recording it. So everyone was a bit like, we don't really know what to do, except like I studied in the science department when I had 2 teachers in my last couple of years that said we need to find a way, and they managed to find a way basically through a lot of coursework and extra science lessons. So I came out of that with a D, which is quite impressive. But high school was a bit of a minefield, and also because they would never, because the physio portion of my education plan was meant to be coming from the local special school, they would never send the same physio because they'd be on maternity leave and starting their own families. So I would only ever see a physio like once every 2 months, which is quite a difference from having to see a physio like all the time.
Yeah.
But also just being told, oh, follow the physio plan with your healthcare assistant, and they did what they could, but obviously because I wasn't seeing a physio to do hands-on stuff, it became my body would have deteriorated anyway, but my body deteriorated more because I got a false hip and had to have a spinal fusion at 18 because no one was really keeping an eye from a physical point of view what my body was doing, because hormones and CP don't really go together. So
of course.
It likes to do its own thing.
It sounds like it must have been incredibly frustrating and upsetting not to be getting the support that you needed in that way. And
yeah,
I mean, it feels like that's the biggest understatement in history as well. So I want to believe that in time and over time, support, particularly in terms of helping students who had similar disabilities but would be able to access GCSEs, that the support in terms of exams and scribing and assistive technology and things like that are beginning to make things better. But my fear is probably that isn't the case. What would you say to any professionals who are listening to this podcast, or parents who've got children in a similar situation? Have you got suggestions for them for how to make it better?
I would say the first thing is make sure your HCP as it is now is exactly what you need, because mainstream high school won't always provide what you need unless it's in black and white. So if you need someone literally sat next to the person all the time, then make sure that that's written in, because I've heard of stories and know people from my own sister's point of view who would take, because she needed minimal support, who would take her support needs off her, or her support time off her, because it was deemed that she was able to do things. So my one suggestion would be make sure it's all written down in black and white and no one can really not do it then, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good example of the last podcast I did was with a solicitor who helps people write EHCPs. And I think that she was saying exactly that, having what the provision is required to meet each student's needs written down in black and white is in that EHCP document, in that legal document, is so important, and having it really specified and quantified as to the need.
Yeah.
And I think, even when that happens, I think making sure that that is then really happening in school is can be challenging still, but at least you've got some recourse if it's not. So yeah, okay. And and in terms of integration, I know, I've got friends who are keen for their children to attend a mainstream school because they want them to be able to make friendships of people, of other children who have similar abilities to them, in terms of academic levels and social levels.
Yeah.
Obviously, that sounds like that was the intention for you, but it didn't work out. Do you have advice for professionals or parents around any things that could have been done to try and make that easier or better?
Again, my first tip would be don't. It sounds backwards to what you're trying to achieve, but don't force the kids to be friends with your person, because that just feels fake. Because I've I had it in the past where someone was my buddy for the day, and then they would have to like be with me, or well, wouldn't have to be with me, but they didn't really want to talk to me or have conversation with me because it was forced and because they were only doing it because an adult was doing it. But I would also say on the flip side that you've got to also give them opportunities to talk to them by themselves if they can be left and you like be in the corner or something in case of like a medical need. Because if there is someone standing or sitting or being with them all the time, then it's going to put people off.
Yeah.
Because they don't really want to talk to the person with the staff because break and lunchtime when you're in high school is important, and they don't want to talk to like basically a teacher.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my 2 tips. Don't force it, but also let them be on their own if they can be, obviously.
Yeah, okay. And I think when we spoke before this recording, you were telling me how having the adult with you all the time you felt was a real turn off for other students, particularly in high school. Like you say, when you're a teenager, you don't want to be around the adult all the time. So
yeah, that was basically the reason. Mainly because everyone in my group was not very nice to me. But that, I think, looking back as an older person now, I think that was the start of a reason why no one wanted to really talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because because older people in my sister's years would talk to me. It just because they were older, but not very much. But they realised, and I don't think everyone realised that in my year in particular, I don't think people realised that there was going to be a severely disabled girl in their year. Not saying that everyone needs time to say, oh, by the way, there's going to be someone different in your year. But I think some education when we were in primary school about how I was going to be coming up to high school full time would have been beneficial, because I also believe that I was like, I think they thought I was just a guest when I was in primary school because I was only there like 2 days a week. I don't think that it really dawned on the kids that I would then be coming up to high school full time. So
No,
yeah.
I think education and the way that adults are speaking and talking to their children about disability is so important. Have you got thoughts of what people can do better to educate their children and educate themselves, I think, in terms of disability and how to approach things differently, because I think, you know, it's clear that there's misunderstanding and there's prejudice and, you know, all kinds of things that go on. What you're already doing these podcasts and getting out there and showing people how amazing you are and all the things that you are managing to do is I guess part of that education. But what else can we do?
I think you've got to realize, you've got to make your kids realize in whatever way possible that people have disabilities, but people's outcomes of those disabilities can be vastly different. Yes, there might be some kids that can walk with a bit of a limp or something, but there are also kids like myself that have complex needs but are still, at the end of the kids. I think they've also got to not make such a massive deal. Well, obviously tell them, but not make such a massive deal about the fact we are disabled and just treat us like kids or 30 or however old we are.
Yeah.
Like, you've just got to realize, you've just got to help them realize that we are people with interests and with family and with people that also care about us. Like, we don't want to be reminded that we are disabled at like every time. And I think the way that people educate their kids is that, oh, that kid's different, that kid's disabled, and they forget themselves, as in the parents, teachers, or whoever's talking, forget themselves that we are in fact children or adults. We have lives, we have families, and we have interests. I don't think thinking that I'm just a disabled person is necessarily the way to educate someone.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I feel like there is a lot of almost fear at times of getting it wrong, of saying the wrong thing, and what then happens is people avoid things and they, you know, they're not helping. And I think what you're saying there in terms of just, you know, almost not pointing it out, making sure that you are remembering that every person that you meet, disability or not, is a person, as a child, and has interests and has families, is really important for everyone to be remembering. And
because we do things slightly differently, but we are still people at the end of the day. Like, my own parents don't want to be reminded every 30 seconds as I walk down the street that I am in a wheelchair, and they don't want to be reminded that someone to be careful of the wheels, because when I drive out and about, I see or I hear parents say, "Oh, be careful of the wheelchair." It's like, I am a person. I'm not just the wheelchair.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's so easy for people to fall into a feeling of feeling like they need to make sure their children are careful, make sure their children don't get in the way, make sure that they're mindful. And it probably comes from a good place in terms of intention, right? But actually, it's so useful for people to remember the impact that has on you, on your family. It's actually about where can you be having a conversation that you would be having irrespective of disability, about somebody's interests, about what they are doing and what they enjoy.
Is
that right?
Yeah, totally. It's the whole, like, it makes me feel like when I'm walking out and about, it makes me feel like I'm something to be scared of. Like, yes, I have a massive wheelchair, and yes, I have the ability to accidentally run you over, but it's not something I intend to do. So people saying, "Oh, be careful of the wheelchair, because it's big and scary." I'm like, I'm not gonna intentionally run you over. Like, I don't see. I get what you just said, but I don't see where this mindset comes from. Of, oh, just because they're intending to run you over. Like, no, no, no one intends to run anyone over.
No, of course not. No, of course not. And I think, I think these are almost historical things that have come down through the ages of people having reactions and feelings and not understanding enough. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so incredible that you do what you're doing in terms of speaking out and talking and coming on podcasts and doing a radio show and helping people to understand the better way to be able to, not continue to do those things. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about your experience moving from school into adulthood. I guess tell us what happened at that point.
When I was 15, it was always clear that I had more than just my physical needs when I was outside the house. Like, I would when I was driving, I would randomly fall off curbs and stuff, and it was always quite clear that something wasn't right. But every time we asked someone, they were like, "Oh, you just can't see in 3D." And my mum and dad were like, "We don't know how they knew that, but okay," and then moved on. And then it wasn't until my pediatrician at the time who had been working with someone else who I later met and became friends with, and she said, "You do." The pediatrician said, "You do realise that you could be registered as visually impaired?" And I was like, "How? Wait, what do you mean?" There is such a thing as CBI, which is where my eyes are absolutely fine, but my brain can't tell my eyes, or my eyes can't tell the brain what it's seeing. So to me, the world is slightly more interesting because I actually, as well as being wheelchair dependent, not being able to move much, but I actually am registered visually impaired and I can't see out the corners of my eyes, so I got no peripheral vision. So that was diagnosed at like 15, and because of that, I was able to get into the west of England, which down here is like a school for people who are visually impaired or blind, and they also have a variety of complex needs that go along with it, that you need to be actually registered as visually impaired or blind to go. So I went there for sixth form, I guess you could say. That was an interesting experience because I spent years not having the support because of my mainstream schooling. It was very hard to get into the world of, "Oh, you can't do that because you're disabled," and I'd be like, "Yes, but I used to be able to, like a term ago, let's just say." And they were like, "No, we can't let you do that because you're in a special needs setting now." So yeah, that was interesting. And then when I was 17, nearly turning 18, my back got so bad that you could actually feel my heartbeat from my stomach. So they decided, the big surgeon, big wigs people, that I needed to have a spinal fusion. So I actually got like my spine fused from my bum to my neck, so I can't really bend forward anymore. I can't roll unless I'm basically log rolled, and I can't sit unaided because basically my spine decided to crumble, and if they hadn't done anything, I would have not been here. So that was fun at 18.
Oh, good, Georgia.
And then when so after that, and after like 4 months of healing at home, basically being looked after by my parents full time because I needed specific training to come in and look after me, and it took a long time to get that. So then I decided to leave the college because it wasn't really working for me anyway. So then I went to the day centre, which I was at when I was a child, because they had an adult bit downstairs. So I would go in and do various like activities from cooking to music to everything, and like I would get the full like care needs that I had met there. But and then about 6 or 7 years ago, I decided to leave that environment, and then I went. I had carers coming into my home who specialised in cerebral palsy because one of their people had one of their sons had cerebral palsy himself, so they decided to set up this like company where it was only like 5 of us, and we would get this support we needed. But because they were specialised in CP, they knew what they were doing. So, but then that sadly broke down for a variety of reasons just after lockdown. So then I went to a care agency which couldn't really provide the support I needed, because I needed someone to take me out and do stuff, more like an enabling visit than care visit, with a bit of care thrown in. But because they were like just a standard care company, they didn't really have a very good understanding of like what enabling was. So then I left that, and weaving my parents and me have employed my own staff for about a year. Yeah, a yearish now. So currently I have 2 enablers that come in and for 8 hours a day, and they help me do all the stuff that I need, but also they enable me more, and they do stuff with me that I need them to do, but they also take me out and stuff, and they help me do things like this podcast, or take me to talk at universities and stuff. So basically, it's a more open thing, and because we employ them for, for ourselves,
Yeah.
it's easier because we can be like, we need you to cover X, Y, Z. Are you able to? And if they say yes, that's great. But also, if they say no, that's not necessarily a problem. But it gives us more flexibility to be able to employ people and have the care and support when I need it. And it gives my mum and dad flexibility to be able to be like, I need to go, because one of my sisters lives in near London.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives them flexibility to be like, I need to go see your sister. Would you mind staying here with the carers, or would you mind taking her on holiday while we go on holiday type thing. There isn't someone that I have to ask to do things now. I can just, within reason, obviously, I can do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would. That is basically my that after school bit. But also, I'm a big advocate for, if you can find the right carers or the right support, employing them by yourself through yourself is actually easier than people think it is. Because yes, you have to do the whole payroll malarkey, but that's only like once a month, like half an hour tops, and the rest of the time is like pretty easy, really, if you can find the right people.
That's great. I love the idea of them being enablers instead of carers. I think that is a great term, and the way you describe the difference. What is the real difference that allows them to be enablers instead of carers? What would you advise people?
My I'm looking at my neighbor now. My advice is just be open and honest about the support you need, and like the real difference is because they were a care company, all they could do was provide the basics, but with being able to employ my own staff, they know, or they know me more than they know. Obviously, they know how to keep me safe and how to provide the care I need, but they also know me as me, and they support me, and I think that's the difference, because they know me as me and not just a name on a piece of paper that needs caring. I think it's easier for them to actually enable me rather than care for me.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I'm saying hello if your enabler is there in the background. Hi there.
Keep waving.
Waving back. It sounds amazing, and I'm so happy to see that is working out for you now, because it just sounds like you've had such a journey with so many things that you have had to deal with and overcome, and I'm really pleased to know that is, that's working out for you now, which is great. In this podcast, we've talked about so much already that I know is going to be helpful and inspiring, but what else would you like to tell everyone who's listening?
Just see, yes, it's not the greatest news when your child has a HIA event and no one's like, oh yay, but they are like, but life is not going to be as bad as perceived, because on paper, I am a very disabled lady, but I think my parents' attitude of it will be challenging, but it won't stop you, is the attitude that I've taken forward to be like, okay, it might be interesting getting around this particular issue, and I might have to have carers for the rest of my life, or my mum and dad there, but there isn't much I can not do.
That's brilliant. Thank you. How about the professionals that you've been working with across the years? Are there, I guess there's been a big variety. Is there anything that you would advise them?
Yeah, no, look at the person you're looking after. Don't just see them as a disabled person with, in the case of physios, a body that doesn't work, or in the case of speech and language, someone that can't speak or something, because we are in fact people, and yes, we might not want to do that therapy in the prescribed way that we're meant to do it, but there is a way that you can make therapy like more fun. I think it's without the person realizing it's therapy. It doesn't have to be, oh, we move your arm 5 times or we move your leg 5 times and then miraculously the video program's done. You can actually talk to them like they're people.
Yeah.
And think, how do you want to reach this target or something? But yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, and you would just hope that that is what happens naturally. But I think, I've seen, and I know everybody who's in the situation of loving somebody who had an HIE event has definitely witnessed times where that is sadly not the case. So I think that's a really, really good message. For any of the children or adults potentially who are listening to this who had an HIE event, have you got any advice or a message for them?
It depending on where you are in the system, I know your bodies are probably not what you really want them to be because of your however extensive your damage is. There is also you can do stuff like, and I know you probably don't want to have someone with you all the time, but if that's the way that you can do something, then I would go ahead and do it because it's better than just not doing anything because you don't want to have someone with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're incredibly positive person, and the way that you talk about this is so amazing. What do you think helps you the most to be so positive in everything you're doing?
Knowing, I guess it's more knowing that I have to have the level of support I do, and I have to do things that are not necessarily the most fun, but also knowing that there's like no other way around doing that, and knowing that like basically not coming to terms with it because I don't think I'll ever come to terms with the fact that I'm not, case in point, able or as able as say my sisters are. But and I do have moments where, because one of them's married and one of them's having a baby, I do have moments where I'm like, if life was different, I'd want to do that. But also I have to be realistic and realize that yes, it is probably possible, but also I have to also come to terms with the fact that my life is different, and it's taken me almost 30 years to realize that my life is different, but it's not bad. It's just not the same as what my mum and dad envisaged when I was first born, I think is what I would say.
Well, that's it's amazing. You're saying it's taken 30 years to get to the point where you feel that way, and I think it's fantastic that you feel that way, and I've just loved talking to you and hearing everything you've had to say. Through the more difficult times, what was your biggest help, I guess, in getting through some of the more challenging times?
If I'm honest, antidepressants, because when I do have really bad times, I don't really want to do anything, and that includes having some of the procedures and care that I need to have done. So if it takes taking a tablet to make it possible to like get through that window of not feeling the happiest, or not wanting to put on a TV, not wanting to put on a show for everyone, then it's taken me a while to accept my need for antidepressant, but I don't think I would be able to be this positive and be this like matter of fact about the situation as I am without the antidepressant, because they just take the edge off everything, and the edge of the fact that I'm like, oh, it's another day when I've got to do this, because it's just they just make my life easier in a way.
As they do, I'm sure, for a lot of us and a lot of people that will be listening to this as well. So I think that's really, really useful. And in terms of the parents listening, and those of us who want to be able to support our children going through some of these difficult times and coming to terms with the disabilities that they have, what advice can you give parents for helping in the best way?
That's a bit of a hard one, but you've got to basically, because I'm not a parent, but I imagine it's hard enough for you to come to terms with it, but because you're the parent and you obviously don't want that for your child, whatever the situation is, you want their life to be as happy as it can be. But also, I think you might have come to terms with it as the parent in whatever situation, but you've got to realise it takes time for the person, the HR even, to come to terms with it, because it's not going to be easy. Like our bodies tend to just chuck up random things at a time. Once you think something's dealt with, it normally comes back round again. So I would say you've got to like give them time to be like, this is not the easiest situation, and eventually, whether it's with the help of antidepressants or just in general, they will slowly come around to it. But yeah, I would say give them time, especially if they're teenagers going through the normal changes, and then you add on body changes, then it's not the easiest situation. So my advice would be time is probably the easiest.
Thank you. Oh, Georgia, it's been so amazing to talk to you, and I think probably we need to wrap up. But before we do, is there like one last message you'd like to leave everybody with?
Life is not easy, no, but it's also life's not easy for like anyone. Like everyone has challenges. This is just a bigger challenge than most people would have, especially at my age. But it is what it is, and it kind of, yes, it's not great, but also everyone has issues and challenges that they deal with. Like, just because you are disabled and you had a HIV event doesn't mean that your life is over.
That's amazing, and it's been just such a pleasure to meet you and get to know you and to have this conversation today. I'm so grateful for you coming to us and saying that you'd like to do this firstly, and I'm sure that there's going to be people listening who've got other questions and I haven't asked the right one. So I'm going to suggest to anyone listening, if you've got questions that you want to ask Georgia, I'm wondering, Georgia, if you'd be happy for people to write comments on the posts, and
yes,
we
that's
can
fine.
obviously come back to you with those. And also, you know, in the future, I'm sure there's going to be other topics that you might be able to really help us to talk about on this podcast. So huge thank you to you. It's been so lovely, and look forward to keeping in touch with you.
No problem, thank you.